They're the men and women tasked with providing around-the-clock protection for one of the most powerful people in the world.
You have to think like the assassin. If I wanted to cause harm to the President of the United States, how would I do it?
You need to make sure that you're constantly thinking of the contingency.
They have technology that's at the extremes of what we're capable of doing.
We put ourselves in harm's way for our protectees. Mission first, protection second.
How does the Secret Service keep the President of the United States safe from threats both known and unknown? How do they offer protection from the world's most advanced weapons and the ultimate threat of assassination? Perhaps the answers to these questions can be found in America's Book of Secrets. South Korea, June 29th, 2019. At 3:46 p.m. local time, the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, steps across a low concrete barrier within the joint security area of the Korean Demilitarized Zone. In doing so, he becomes America's first commander-in-chief to set foot inside one of the most dangerous and oppressive countries on Earth, the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea.
Trump setting foot in North Korea is one of those things that presidents have to have the option to do. While he's the president, he's in charge of American foreign policy, but it's an extremely challenging problem for the Secret Service.
Just one day previously, the president, while in Japan for an international summit, arranged for the face-to-face meeting with a man who, up to that moment, had expressed contempt for the United States, the supreme leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un. And just as surprising, President Trump initiated the meeting via Twitter. While the Secret Service usually has months to prepare for an official state visit, in this case, they had less than 24 hours.
Secret Service agents know that they are never going to eliminate risk. It's about managing risk. So bringing the president 20 feet into North Korea, we understand what those risks are. There's a risk tolerance that we have that we can allow. The dynamic is a little bit different. We have a foreign adversary, we have standing armies. What are we going to do in a tactical situation, a medical situation, or if we had to relocate the president? Secret Service had multiple plans in place that coordinated with U.S. military assets, with our foreign counterparts from South Korea, intelligence services. The plan was very comprehensive, as it is anywhere that we bring the president.
The president's encounter in North Korean territory was followed by a sit-down meeting just inside South Korean territory. It was during this event that tensions escalated, and North Korean bodyguards blocked U.S. government officials and media from access to the two leaders. White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham was even injured in a physical altercation. But even in this extremely volatile environment, members of the U.S. Secret Service were undoubtedly ensuring the president's safety. But is it possible they were also safeguarding their own trade secrets?
I would be very surprised if there weren't a lot of North Korean and potentially Russian and Chinese assets just waiting to see what capabilities the U.S. turned on as President Trump stepped foot in North Korea. The Secret Service might have abstained from using some of its most cutting-edge technologies just to make sure that they weren't detected, but for North Korea, that's just too great of a potential intelligence windfall to let it pass by.
It had been just a few months prior that President Trump had asked that the Secret Service's annual budget be raised 7% to more than $2.3 billion. It was an acknowledgement of how dangerous the world had become, how critical the mission of the Secret Service was, and how far the organization had come since its humble origins in the mid-19th century.
The U.S. Secret Service is actually a relatively small agency compared to other ones. A lot of people think that the U.S. Secret Service was founded to protect the President of the United States. It's actually not true. The U.S. Secret Service was founded to investigate counterfeit currency. 1865 by Abraham Lincoln.
Ironically, the legislation establishing the Secret Service was signed by Abraham Lincoln the very same day that he was assassinated. But at that point, the Secret Service had nothing to do with protecting the president.
The Secret Service officially began protecting the President of the United States in 1902, after William McKinley was shot and killed just 6 months into his second term. Since then, 15 attempts have been made on the lives of sitting presidents. But on November 22nd, 1963, at approximately 12:30 p.m., while riding in a convertible Lincoln Continental as part of a motorcade in Dallas, Texas, President John F. Kennedy was struck by 2 bullets, fired from long range by Lee Harvey Oswald, and murdered in cold blood.
After President Kennedy was killed in Dallas in November of 1963. That motorcade in Dallas, you'd never see that happening today. An open car, people very close to where the cars are going, the cars slowing down in the motorcade and so on.
Specifically to the issue with JFK in Dallas, Texas, on that tragic day, there was a judgment call that was made not to put the roof on the car, have an open-top vehicle in the motorcade. Prior to that tragic day, the Secret Service wasn't thinking about those long-range, very tactical threats from a sharpshooter.
The death of President Kennedy caused the nation to mourn and the Secret Service to take bold action. Just days after the assassination, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, more commonly known as DARPA, launched a clandestine program to protect the president, known as Project STAR.
Project STAR basically asked them to figure out how they would kill a president and then create defenses from those methods.
Project STAR, led by newly installed Director Robert Sproul, tasked military scientists to conceive more exotic wargaming scenarios.
The biggest and most obvious, when Kennedy was assassinated, he was riding in a limousine with no armor that had had the top removed so that he would be more visible. DARPA added steel and titanium to the limousine to keep it better protected from ballistics, and they had to figure out the science of making bulletproof glass. Nearly any vehicle that carries the president carries the legacy of Project STAR.
Like a lot of DARPA programs, Project STAR came as a result of something going on in the real world. The result was a lot of deep thinking about how can we protect the President of the United States.
You have to think like the assassin. If I wanted to cause harm to the President of the United States, how would I do it? And you work in reverse, you reverse engineer it, and then you create your security plan.
DARPA designed countermeasures for scores of other assassination scenarios.
Some of these ended up feeling a little bit like Bond tools, such as methods of redirecting the way that flags would fly behind the president during speeches so that shooters would adjust for the wrong wind.
While many of the futuristic scenarios never came to fruition, the impact on the Secret Service is long-lasting. Beyond the concepts of how to protect the president, perhaps the most effective tool is the men and women who comprise the Secret Service.
The selection process is really interesting. They get thousands, if not tens of thousands of applications per year. They look at so many different things. Education, any special skills that you bring to the table. Are you healthy and strong enough to do the job? Physical demeanor, physical power, physical strength is a huge part of the position. And academics, testing.
They go through training, which is 16 weeks in the Secret Service training facility in Maryland, and also additional training in a federal facility in Georgia. It's a very intensive preparation to guard the president.
There are certain qualities you need to have to be an agent, and really you have the Secret Service star and the 5 points of the star: integrity, dignity, loyalty, worthy of trust and confidence, and above all, bravery. You cannot be a coward to do this job.
In addition to the uncompromising personality traits required of Secret Service agents, there's an arsenal of unique tools to help them with their mission. In fact, one of the most effective means of protecting the president may actually be the White House itself. Washington, D.C., September 19th, 2014. At 7:20 p.m., 42-year-old Omar J. Gonzalez, an Iraq war veteran suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, scales the iron perimeter fence of the White House and races 70 yards across the lawn through the north portico doors.
Gonzalez not only scaled the outside fence, but he got inside the White House, which was not locked.
There's a saying in the Secret Service, complacency kills. And the moment that you become complacent, a threat will present itself. And that's exactly what happened on this day.
Generally, these people are stopped a few paces from the big fence. But in this case, this was a tremendous breach of security that this fella could have gotten in there, so it could have been very dangerous.
After subduing the suspect, Secret Service agents discover a Spyderco folding knife with a 3.5-inch serrated blade in his pocket. They also find 800 rounds of ammunition and 2 hatchets in his Ford Bronco, parked just outside the White House complex. Omar Gonzalez was already familiar to the Secret Service. Just 1 month before the breach, they interviewed him regarding a traffic stop that revealed a small arsenal of weapons, including a sawed-off shotgun, several assault rifles, and a map of Washington with a circle around the White House.
So with that very specific incident, it was a dark day for the Secret Service. Multiple layers of protection failed. Extensive amount of time and effort was put into understanding why they failed.
Although there had been a spate of White House fence jumpers, at least 16 in the previous 5 years, fallout from the security breach was swift. On October 1st, 2014, Secret Service Director Julia Pearson was forced to resign. After the incident, enhanced safety protocols were deployed, including additional fencing, sophisticated infrared sensors, and a revised edict on the use of deadly force.
So the Secret Service has gone back. They have re-engineered the way that they protect that house. They've become more comprehensive. That will never happen again.
When you're in the White House, it is like being in a military base. You have sensors all over the White House grounds. There are uniformed guards everywhere. You have Secret Service agents all over the place.
There are about 1,200 Secret Service officers to protect the White House and the grounds. Secret Service has counter snipers stationed on the roof of the White House and across the street.
Secret Service has to manage out from the White House and control the environment within the fence line and beyond the fence line. It could be the threat of an explosive device. It could be a protest. It could be someone who's trying to jump over the fence. It could be someone who got over the fence.
Although the White House is now considered one of the most fortified residences in the world, surprisingly, up until World War II, it was largely accessible to the public. In 1945, when President Harry Truman moved into the White House, he found it to be nearly in shambles. Between 1949 and 1952, Congress authorized a complete renovation, leaving only the iconic sandstone exterior intact. When the dust settled, an impressive and ultra-secret array of new security features had been built into the structure and the 18 acres of grounds beneath it.
There's a couple of places at the White House that are more secretive, and so we don't know as much about them. There's a little alcove outside the Oval Office where you push a panel, a door opens, it's an elevator, it takes you down, and you find yourself in a tunnel, and that tunnel goes to the East Wing, which is the residence part of the White House. That was designed to get the president out of there if he was under attack.
I was the Air Force military aide to the president. My mission was primarily to be an emergency action officer. So in other words, if anything happened on the White House complex, we were in a circle of safety around the president to make sure the office and the continuity of government still was in line. And if we needed the president to move, we never disclose the avenues that he gets to a certain location on campus, on the 18 acres.
In the West Wing, just below the Oval Office, there's a top-secret area where America's commander-in-chief can monitor and control U.S. military forces around the world. It functions as an advanced communications headquarters, the Situation Room.
The Situation Room is the innermost sanctum of the White House. It is where the president or members of his staff will go to have the most intimate of conversations, whether it has to do with intelligence or national security.
The Situation Room is a operations center. As you can imagine, with all that information flowing in and out, there is cybersecurity everywhere. I would characterize it as being some of the most sophisticated in the world.
I was the body man for President Barack Obama. So I've been in the Situation Room. In terms of the protocols, the Situation Room, in theory, is the ultimate SCIF. SCIF meaning it is a place in which no other people can see or hear. The idea is that the information that is being transmitted or communicated within those walls are not being retransmitted or listened to in other places.
This is the room where military missions are supervised. The famous photographs that people will remember of President Obama in the Situation Room as the military raid was being conducted that killed bin Laden.
But as much as the Situation Room functions as the executive command center during a national crisis, where does the Secret Service put the president when there's immediate physical danger at the White House itself? May 29th, 2020. A fast-moving crowd is protesting against police brutality. It swarms Lafayette Square across from the White House. As the chaos threatens to spiral out of control, it's widely reported that Secret Service agents rushed President Donald Trump into a secure bunker deep beneath the White House.
As protesters got close to the barrier, they eventually breached an outer barrier. And the Secret Service took that as a sign that, hey, this is getting too dangerous, we need to get the first family to safety. And they rushed the family into the bunker.
Officials had previously refused to confirm or deny the existence of such a clandestine bunker. However, investigative reporter Ronald Kessler points to a major classified construction project that broke ground on the north lawn of the White House in 2010 as proof.
I broke the story about that. There was heavy excavation going on, as you can imagine, on the north lawn, and the General Services Administration put out the false narrative that this was just to relocate utility lines, but actually it was this secret bunker built by the Defense Department, which is actually 5 or 6 stories deep. It has supplies that last months, food, oxygen, and that is where the president would go in the event of an attack, because it's protected against even a nuclear strike.
So people often ask me at the White House, is there a bunker? What does the bunker look like? All I can say is that the White House is a secure environment, and that within it, there are secure places that the Secret Service can go to ensure that the president's safe. Beyond that, everything is classified.
Is it possible that when the Secret Service relocated President Trump, they also inadvertently confirmed the existence of a fortified and clandestine bunker? And if such a bunker, buried 5 stories underground, is ultimately required to keep the president safe at home, how does the Secret Service ensure that level of protection when the president is on the move? Manhattan, New York, September 24th, 2018. Presidential helicopter Marine One arrives at the Wall Street heliport, carrying President Donald Trump. President Trump makes his way to the 73rd United Nations General Assembly in a brand new, heavily armored presidential limousine known as the Beast.
The Beast, as it's referred to, is one of the most recognizable vehicles in the world. People see that as a symbol of the presidency. The size, the gravitas of that vehicle is in tandem to the position that the person holds who's sitting inside.
The Beast is designed so that if there is some type of attack, the president can actually be in the vehicle and withstand the attack. And that you can not only just withstand the attack, but that you're able to move him to a place of safety.
Just what exactly are the specific designs and materials used to construct the Beast? Well, that's hard to know, since that information is top secret and highly classified. But there are some clues, and they can be found in San Antonio, Texas. That's where Texas Armoring Corporation's Trent Kimball leads a team that provides state-of-the-art vehicle armoring similar to what would potentially be found on the presidential limousine.
Everything that Texas Armoring does to manufacture an armored vehicle is very similar to what goes into the Beast. The Beast is just supersized. The materials are supersized. The braking system is supersized. The suspension system is supersized.
The Beast is perhaps the most advanced armored vehicle in the world. Based on what we do and how we armor our vehicles, gives us a pretty good idea of what we could expect would be inside the presidential limousine.
The Beast weighs an estimated 20,000 pounds and requires a highly modified V8 engine. And even then, it only hits a top speed of 60 miles per hour. Each of the dozen or more limousines in the presidential fleet is built by General Motors from the ground up at a reported cost of nearly $2 million per vehicle.
It might look like a standard Cadillac limousine, but it's definitely not. It's a specialized armored vehicle that's probably more in line of like a tank or other military type vehicle.
What we would expect to see in the Beast are the same materials that we use. The ballistic glass, the ballistic steel, the run-flat tires, those things would be the same. The difference is the Beast has a maximum level of protection.
The undercarriage of the Beast is likely protected with different types of composite materials, composite armor, that is meant to suppress the explosive effect as well as the concussion of a blast coming underneath the vehicle. But in terms of what it'll actually stop, the Secret Service has, got that under wraps.
The fuel tank is protected with ballistic nylon and then sprayed with a rubberized undercoating to protect against the elements. What this ballistic nylon does is it protects against hand grenades, IEDs, landmines, so that your fuel won't leak out or your whole vehicle won't explode.
While the Beast is used to protect the president, it's believed the vehicle has some rather effective countermeasures.
So in addition to the actual ballistic protection on the presidential limousine, there's likely some emergency countermeasures to buy extra time in the event that the president's attacked. So there's a good chance there's night vision equipped on the vehicle. They probably have a store of weapons for the driver to access as like a last-ditch protection. There's likely blood supplies of the president's blood on board in the event that he's seriously wounded and they don't have time to airlift him.
As we've witnessed in the past, with the assassination of JFK and the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan, perhaps the most clear and present danger is from a gunman. Trent and Lawrence have set up a ballistic glass test to demonstrate just how safe the president would be from incoming fire.
The bullet-resistant glass that we're going to shoot today is 2 inches thick. It has several layers of glass that are sealed together with polyurethane, and then the inner layer is polycarbonate.
We estimate the presidential Beast to be about 5 to 6 inches thick based on conventional ballistic glass that we use here.
Lawrence will now test the integrity of the ballistic glass by firing at close range with an AK-47 assault rifle.
This ballistic glass demonstration is a good idea of what would happen if the president were to be attacked. This type of glass is certainly what they're using to keep him safe. It's dispersing the kinetic energy of the bullet as it goes in. So you can actually dig the bullet out of here. It's still contained within this ballistic block. So keep in mind that there's no such thing as bulletproof glass. Everything is bullet resistant. So when the president is traveling in the Beast, that's going to buy him extra time to get out of that dangerous situation.
As impressive as the Beast may be, safeguarding the president while on the road requires more than the protection of a single vehicle.
The motorcade movements within protection are extremely dangerous, and here's why. It's what we refer to as the deadly diamond. Everyone knows where you're starting from, and everyone knows where you're going. And that's where attacks are most likely going to happen.
President's motorcade can actually be quite long, and there's a lot of different vehicles, and each vehicle can serve different functions. You'll see police vehicles, you'll see staff vehicles, you'll see a press vehicle, then you'll see ballistic vehicles that belong to the Secret Service. You'll see 2 limos as well, and even an ambulance for emergency purposes.
So now we have to think about how do we protect that moving target throughout urban environments, war zones, foreign countries. How are you going to operate in a tactical, medical, or relocation situation? How does that vehicle come into play?
On the ground, the Secret Service protects the president with precision wheelwork, coordinated and planned by a vast team of agents. But how do they maintain that level of protection at 30,000 feet? The answer involves quick thinking and lots of training, all at more than 600 miles per hour. June 15th, 1974. Air Force One, the Boeing 707 aircraft used to transport the President of the United States, enters Syrian airspace on its way to Damascus. On board, President Richard Nixon and his staff are preparing for a highly anticipated visit celebrating a historic détente between Israel and Syria. Suddenly, 4 Soviet MiGs appear out of nowhere. As the Russian fighters take position behind Air Force One's wing, pilot Colonel Ralph Abitezi takes immediate evasive action.
It was a tremendous scare, really, for the president, for everybody aboard the plane. Abitezi threw the plane into a dive. Half the staff was not buckled in, and so they're hitting the ceiling. It was that steep a dive, but it was a mistake. The leaders of Syria wanted an honor guard of planes to escort Air Force One into their country, but they neglected to pass it along through the chain of command to the pilot of Air Force One. President Nixon, by the way, never mentioned it later. He always wanted to put on this tough exterior, but he admitted to a friend later that he thought that they were not going to survive it, that this was going to be the end.
In the years following this near crisis, preventing even the possibility of a similar situation has become a top priority for the Secret Service. As a result, not only were Air Force One's security and communications protocols updated and enhanced, so was Air Force One itself.
What makes Air Force One the most secure airplane in the world is the security features that it has on board. Unfortunately, not a lot that I can discuss here. Most of it is classified. But what I will say is it may look like a regular 747, but the entire plane has been engineered for that critical airborne protection of the president from point A to point B.
Beyond its many secret offensive and defensive options while in flight, Air Force One also fulfills another critical function. Because while protecting the president's safety at 30,000 feet is Air Force One's primary mission, its design also incorporates protections for the United States itself.
Air Force One is the flying White House. It's the way the president gets around the world. It's come to symbolize the president's power, the reach of the American presidency in the United States, and technological prowess of the United States.
I remember the first time I saw Air Force One, and it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. It was just gleaming. And you see the doors open and the President of the United States comes down. It's extraordinary. Air Force One is essentially maintained and protected by the Air Force. It is their plane. We are guests when we go on that plane.
My role as a commander of Air Mobility Command was to oversee the military airlift of cargo based off the needs of the presidency. You need to make sure that you're constantly thinking of the contingency. Where is Air Force One going to be parked? How's Air Force One secured? How's its fuel secured? You're talking about hundreds of sorties to fly what's needed to support the president. You got Marine One, you got the Air Force One, you've got the White House staff, you've got the press corps, you've got everything that goes with the president to move. That's all the packages that gets moved by the military. And so that coordination done by airlift ops, now we check off, okay, we've got the lift required? Yes, we're good to go. We've got communications in place? Yes, we're good to go. Then you do an advance of the trip and you make sure everything's in order.
No matter where the president goes, there is cybersecurity implications. We are talking about ensuring the commander-in-chief, the head of state, and the leader of the United States can execute his job and his staff can execute their jobs securely without any interference, no matter where they are deployed to. So because it's Air Force One, we will work very closely with the military, and we'll leave it at that.
It is a doomsday airplane. It has to function as a command and control post in the event of a nuclear conflict. So you have to think about what the world would be like after nuclear bombs are going off in different places. Will there be the kind of infrastructure that airplanes use? Navigation aids, air traffic control, even weather assistance. So they have to anticipate what that world would be like and make sure it's still possible for the pilots to fly the airplane safely.
To keep pace with evolving 21st century threats, the United States Air Force recently commissioned the development of 2 Boeing 747s to serve as the new and improved Air Force One. At a cost of more than $1.6 billion apiece, some government insiders say that these planes are being designed not only with the latest technology in mind, but with secret capabilities that push the boundaries of physics.
The actual budget numbers, you can look them up, but the details of the technology are not in there. We don't get to know a whole lot about them. We do know that they use an infrared jammer for heat-seeking missiles. It's probable that they also use some form of active radar jamming for radar-guided missiles.
The anti-missile devices were designed to release chaff to divert incoming missiles, heat-seeking missiles. They're there now, and I'm sure they'll be there for the next plane.
Boeing had a very interesting patent a few years ago where they looked at how they could interrupt the shock wave that would come from an explosion. What Boeing's technology is trying to do is create a sort of force field around an aircraft. It's basically a quick lightning strike that would exactly counter the explosion, effectively stopping it and preventing any shrapnel or force wave from either destroying the fuselage or taking out the engines. Boeing patented this technology about 5 years ago, so if Boeing has figured this out, the first plane that's going to exist on is Air Force One.
Could the new Air Force One actually be equipped with some type of force field? And if so, could there be other advanced technologies to protect the president still in development? Countermeasures that were once believed to exist only in science fiction. According to government insiders, the answer is yes. Washington, D.C., January 25th, 2015. At approximately 3 a.m. local time, an unidentified aircraft quietly flies past the perimeter fence surrounding the White House. and makes its way undetected towards the executive residence. Secret Service agents immediately swarm the area with guns drawn, only to discover no assassin, but instead, a consumer drone.
The idea that a recreational operator crashed a drone on the grounds creates the possibility that if someone were intentionally flying a drone on the grounds, they might have been able to get it into the mansion and potentially attack someone inside, if not the president themselves. It's an extremely challenging problem for the Secret Service.
Foreign flying objects entering into airspace that are unidentified, those are some of the highest threats you would see because there's so much unknown.
The unauthorized drone's foray onto White House grounds was certainly a wake-up call that more needed to be done to protect against serious breaches of security.
The airspace security program that's put forth by the Secret Service is classified. What I can say is that the airspace over the White House is highly restrictive. It's a collaboration between the military, the FAA, and the Secret Service.
The White House's defenses against an intentional attack through the airspace actually start with a very large standoff zone. There's restricted airspace around the White House in all directions, and anything that flies into that zone, we scramble either Coast Guard helicopters or Air Force jets or both to intercept that aircraft and to warn them off away from the area. If they continue approaching, the Air Force is authorized to shoot down targets over the Capitol region and risk collateral damage on the ground.
The Secret Service has a lot of technologies available to them. There's a whole industry out there for counter UAS technologies, counter unmanned aircraft systems. For decades, the technology that the military has been working on has been high-energy lasers. It's a great way to shoot things down because it moves at the speed of light, and it's very powerful.
We've seen an Avenger system deployed on top of the White House, equipped with Stinger missiles. This would give protective forces at the White House the ability to strike down a target from over 3 kilometers away from the launching station.
Despite constantly reviewing and updating its aviation protocols, many security experts believe that the Secret Service must act much more decisively in order to protect the president at the White House right now. Because what many would consider to be futuristic kinds of threats are already here.
The 21st century has already seen a lot of technologies mature to the point where they can become an increased threat. There's a rising threat from what are called micro drones. Someone could take cheap drones off the shelf, give them a pre-programmed mission, and then attempt to use them to attack the president with anything from a hand grenade up to a thermite grenade or a larger payload.
Threats never remain at rest. They're constantly evolving, and we are seeing AI technology, machine learning, combined with platforms such as drones and other types of autonomous vehicles. That over-the-horizon threat that can be pre-programmed, that doesn't necessarily need an operator, represents the next wave of threat that the Secret Service has to prepare for.
While an intelligent swarm of micro-drones may present a clear and present danger to the president, like most external threats, they can be countered. But how does the Secret Service defend the president when the threat to his security detail is completely invisible to the naked eye? Washington, D.C., October 2nd, 2020. 1 week after hosting a crowded outdoor ceremony in the White House Rose Garden to announce his nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to the U.S. Supreme Court, it is revealed that President Donald Trump has tested positive for the potentially deadly COVID-19 virus. Now, the Secret Service is tasked with protecting the president from threats not only foreign and domestic, but also microscopic and biological.
Health security has become a new domain of the Secret Service because it's been put into practice now with coronavirus. When I was a Secret Service agent, we talked about how bacteria and viruses can affect our protectees. How do you create a bubble around the president that's absent of a deadly virus or bacteria?
One of the things we've learned in 2020 is just how big of a threat disease can be to the president. The most visceral example of this, someone could get near the president while they were intentionally infected with a threat, which could potentially kill the president just as easily as an assassin's bullet or a grenade. So the virus itself makes an extreme logistical hurdle for the Secret Service.
The medical protocols around the president are very complex. Secret Service agents have a level of medical training. Some Secret Service agents are paramedics. We have a close working coordination with the White House medical unit that's always around the president, whether we're at the White House or traveling. The medical protocols are a significant portion of our protective methodology. We put ourselves in harm's way for our protectees. The president is going to do what the president wants to do. Mission first, self-protection second.
You're actually not protecting the individual. You're protecting what the presidency is. You're protecting what it represents. You're protecting the people. And so you better be good. You better be excellent.
Everyone sleeps a little easier knowing that Department of Homeland Security's finest members in the Secret Service branch are, helping to execute on a lot of those critical functions.
Secret Service is going to protect the president, no matter what. When it says the Secret Service will take a bullet for the president, that's no kidding.
President Barack Obama once remarked that American democracy is bigger than any one person. That's why Secret Service agents take an oath to defend the Constitution and not the individual president. And after taking that oath, the men and women tasked with protecting the president perform a duty that demands they succeed 100% of the time. They must utilize all of their brain power, firepower, technology, training, and perhaps a few other techniques that we may not be aware of, but may someday be revealed in America's Book of Secrets.